Hi there, it's Rob here from the gym team and welcome to this mobility training session. Grab yourself a pint of water, stick some quiet tunes on the background, and we're going to go through our training set. Have a drink of water, cheers. Okay, put your water safely to the side. Okay, so from there, find yourself a space, check around one way, check around the other, check above your head, make sure you've got freedom of space to just do this workout. Okay, so a lot of people coming into me at the moment have got a lot of back problems and hip problems. So we are going to be looking at ways that we can help that. First of all, you're going to try and get yourself onto a nice soft floor. So if you've got a carpet, that's brilliant. If not, I've got a nice 10mm mat here. Please also, if you can, do this in your bare feet so that you can get the telemetry of your body down to where it should be. From here, we're just going to relax our shoulders, drop our chest up forwards and high, and work through our range here. From here, we're going to be lifting our knees up nice and high forwards, elbows back, thumbs facing forward, gear the fingers out nice and wide, and let yourself stride through this position. Now, what we're trying to do here is launch ourselves up vertically. So this isn't a case of just wiggle through your feet. This is a case of can you use your feet to propel yourself up and back down again? And hopefully you can. Now, as you're doing this, I want you to take note of what happens, because your right leg and your left leg will be different. And you might find that as you're doing this, as I'm working through this, I can feel that I sway a lot further to the right side on each stride. And we've got a little bit of a sway going on here. So that means I've got an imbalance. So what you're trying to do is try and imagine there's a string between your head and the ceiling. And that's going to try and pull you up. Now, as you're doing this, you're going to find two things. One that will happen is you're going to sit into this. You'll get a bit of anterior pelvic tilt. So your bottom's going to shoot back. So I want you to try and correct that and still see if you can work through that movement. And as soon as you do that, you're going to find a couple of little gremlins. And those gremlins, for me, are right in the lower side of my left back and around that left hip. So I'm going to keep working here. I'm going to keep lifting up and keep working through. And as I do this, I can bring a bit of arm movement into it as well. So we're trying to become more athletic in our movement. The shoulders drop back into position, the chest is lifted, and we're moving forward and back here. Now, just take notice of what's happening in you. Are you able to roll over your toes? You might find that one foot has to force you to roll over this way. It might be because you've got a bunion on your big toe. It could be that you just don't have that flexibility in your feet. And if you're finding this difficult and being able to launch up vertically and roll over the whole of your toes so that the knuckles come down to the floor safely, and you're able to load and lift as you work through. Now, if you can't do that, and it's specifically one foot, I highly recommend you start working on moisturizing your feet every single night, really massaging your feet. They're so important. If you weigh 100 kilos, then your feet are taking all of that load. And certainly you walk one foot here, perhaps, and then the other foot, and if that's your gait, that's taking all the load of your body laterally through one side and one foot. So if your feet can't flex and they can't recoil, you can't extend, you can't get power through. And if the toes and the ankles can't move properly, you're going to have massive problems in your mobility. The next part, in my opinion, that's going to go wrong is that the pelvis and the hip joints don't work properly. Now, the pelvis is at the base of that spine. It wants to kind of oscillate left and right as you're moving. It also tilts forward and back. But also inside of it, we've got a hip that comes in as a ball and socket joint into that pelvis. And that helps to oscillate and rotate around. Now, if the ankle can't move, then the knee can't track forward and back, then the hip has got no chance. And the biggest joint anatomically of our body is then out of section. Now, I've been talking a lot here because I want you to work on this lift. I want you to see where you are now. We've actually started to fatigue ourselves. And as I look up on the camera on Zoom, I can see people swaying left, right, and center. And it's great because it proves my theory that you're not completely balanced 50-50. You might be 60-40. You might have some tensions here. And as I said before, my left glute was starting to feel quite tight. And as a result of that, it's now starting to feel quite fatigued. Because it's working hard anyway, because it was short, it's now working really hard to keep movement and keep propelling my body weight up and down. So from here, I'm going to stand on my right leg, and I'm just going to cock that left leg out to the side. Now, as I do this, to help prevent it from being too difficult, my body's very clever and immediately sticks me into an anterior pelvic tilt. It sticks the bum back. So what I want to do is now lift through the torso, pull that string up to the ceiling, and can you hold that same stride? The other thing we're going to do is that the feet should be side by side. So as we come out into the lateral kick, we're going to start off with our feet still side by side. The natural part of the hip and ball socket is it will want to circumvent, so your foot would turn laterally upwards. What we're going to do is we're going to try and keep it nice and in plane. Now, as we drive the pelvis forward and we lift our chest, this is starting to get very, very tight. Already, you might have noticed that your leg has started to drop. Keep it up and keep striding it up. You're going to take the leg back. The feet are still side by side, parallel. You're going to bring the foot back to middle, and then you're going to drive your leg forward. Bring it back to side by side, stand and walk out. Now, as you did that, you might have found that got really tight in our hip flexors. You might have found you got really tight in your glute, which is your hip extensor. Which one got tight for you? Assess. Let's do the same thing again. We're going to work. Again, as you stand on one leg, you might find your bottom sticks back. The reason why it's trying to do that is because you're telling it to lift the foot up. But what I want you to try and do is extend the pelvis and the hip here and get yourself into a nice neutral position. To do that, you do what's called a Trendelenburg lift. You're trying to lift this pelvis up nice and high. The feet are still side by side where you lift that to the side. The toes are nice and parallel. Now, if you stick back here, it's easy. If you lift and launch it, it's tough because the muscle groups are having to lift the weight of that leg. For me, that's probably about 20 to 25 kilograms of weight for a lot of muscles to hold in what is not a normal movement. Because on our day-to-day, we don't walk like crabs. We walk forward and back. We're going to lift the leg forward. And as you lift forward, do you sink? Do you lift? As you bring it back side by side, can you maintain posture? My outside of this hip is singing. It is screaming at me. We're going to bring it back again. And then we're going to bring it side by side. My calf is on fire. And I release and I work out of it. Why is this important, and why is that important to mobility? Well, simply enough, you're learning about your body. As you walk out of this hip flexor is really screaming at me. So I know that I need to work a little bit of flexibility on this right hip flexor. The other thing I need to know is that I need to work on hip drive and leg strengthening exercises based on my right hip. Really good stuff. Still with me? Let's see what we've got. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to stand and push forward. By the way, if you got to the end of that and you didn't feel you were tired, I believe you're not pushing and lifting as much as you possibly can. Yeah, because it is really hard work. Drive forward and lift. Come out laterally to the side. This time we're going to allow that foot to laterally rotate because the femur is going to turn and oscillate with the ball and socket joint. We're going to push forward on a pelvis and lift up high. The leg is going to come forward as if you're side footing a ball. You're going to bring it back and extend. Now, I guarantee that you are going to be feeling this right in this area and it's going to be screaming. If it's not, lift your chest, raise up through the center of your body and maintain that balance. Come back again to midpoint and come off it again. Walk out, assess what happened. Again, my right hip flexor got really solidly tight, way more than my glutes. So I know, again, that my theory about what I need to go and practice is true. Let's go again. Roll out the hips, shake out the pelvis. It could also be that they're already fatigued now as well, and we're going to keep training. So this is a good mobility session. From here, standing, posture, lift chest, center the body. Point, plan to flex the foot away from you. Side foot the leg away. As you do it, correct what happens in your pelvis. It's going to sink back. Push it forward, lift the chest and extend the abdominals. Take it back through lateral kick and feel it fire in your glutes. If you feel you lean forward, stop cheating and bring that torso back up. And you might find, like I just did, that we went completely off balance. We then come back into side poise, toe pointed away still, the leg laterally rotated, bring it back into middle and point it all away. Now, as I did that, reassess what happened. So again, hip flexor got tight for me, but this time my left foot, the undersole of my foot, got really tight. And that's evidence of I'm supinating my foot, which is not the right mobility that I want for my left foot, because when we run, we're on about 3 degrees of supination, and I know that that was going more towards about 30 degrees, which is 10 times too much. So we're going to now change, we're going to go back to the leg. We're going to have our feet fist gap apart, we're going to check our feet. Now this time, I want you to have a little think about your feet. In terms of your feet, your second toes want to be nice and parallel to each other, and your big toe slightly turned in. As you stand, we're starting to improve mobility and posture. So from big toe to little toe, they're flat down to the floor and they're driven. Toes to heel, flat down as well. We're going to drive, we're going to trend over, we're going to lift that hip up. We drive our pelvis forward so the pelvis is still square and driven. And again, we're going to do the same as what we did on the other side. I knew this was going to screw with me straight away. So our feet are nice and parallel to the side. I've got to try and avoid tilting into this. And I know this is going to work, so I'm going to put a fingertip on the wall. And I know this is already working because this hip flexor was already short. Remember, we were talking about it before. I was assessing my performance all the way through. The foot stays nice and parallel. The weight on this finger, by the way, is minimal. It's purely a proprioception thing. And the reason behind it is because I'm so used to that hip being forward, I'm now trying to extend it and bring it back. As a result, my glute tightens, and I'm feeling myself in a really lovely upright position. But I've got to tell my brain that this is stable and this is normal, so I put a finger towards to give myself a bit of agility. Here we go. We're going to lift that leg forward, hip pelvis forward in alignment, still centered up through the body. We're going to bring it back side by side. Everything now starting to scream in this standing leg. Bring the leg back behind you. You might find you've still got your balance. You can hold it in posture. Bring it back again. The whole of my lower back, thoracolumbar fascia is now starting to pull. And all those muscles that come down just above the pelvis have worked hard. Step out of it, walk out. What happened for you? What happened? So before, on the other leg, my right hip flexor got really sore, really short. Glutes wasn't feeling it. This side, standing on this leg, everything on the lateral phase of that body working really hard. So we've got our TFL that runs down here, tensor fasciae latae, and that joins down into the iliotibial band. So we're going to go back into this step. Let's go. Pelvis drive forward, step out wide. Again, toes nice and parallel, feet forward. Again, if you've sunk into this position, extend, lengthen it out, and feel what happens. Also, I'd highly recommend as well, if you've got a mirror or you're watching yourself on the camera here, just see what happens at your knee joints. So from here, as I'm working through this, you can see here, I've got a little bit of knee flexion going on. So I'm now going to try and center and lift harder by standing straighter on that leg. That's why I want you to assess yourself. If you've got knee bend, extend it. It's an indication of tight hamstrings and wow minor tight. Again, we're going to lift forward. As we do it, we make sure that the feet stay nice and parallel, the pelvis is forward. We lift back, we extend. The iliac isoceratus, the hip flexor up here, is fully lengthening out. We come back into play, stabilize. Feel what's happening in your standing foot. Big toe, little toe, toes to heel, flat down to the floor and square. Drop it back down, walk out. Shake it out. Your legs should be screaming. Your hips should be screaming. And it's all stability, all isometric work, it's all balance. But as you're walking around, if you're working on this new posture of yours, you should be feeling taller, able to breathe deeper, and hopefully a reduction in things like headaches as well. Grab a quick drink of water, because your lips will get dry on that. We're going to work the same exercise again. But this time we're going to work on our lateral rotation, circumducting through the hip. So again, check your feet position. Toes nice and parallel, big toe, little toe square down to the floor. Pelvis driven forward, glutes engaged. Let's go. We lift to the side, but we allow the foot to turn and rotate. We plan to flex the foot to point the toe away. We drive the pelvis forward. Imagine you're in a toaster and you've got to try and keep yourself as straight and as upright as you can. As you're working through this, you want to feel what's happening. Are you tilting and leaning, or are you staying up nice and tall? Are you centering your body? Are you allowing yourself to rotate? Correct. Get everything to where it should be. You drive the foot forward, still in plan to flex. If at this point something around your pelvis is not screaming at you, you're not tall enough. Lift up through your body. Come back through extension. Come back to the side. Keep pointing on the toe, and then release. Wowzers. And all of this, for me, is true mobility work. Okay, really, really important. Now, if you're thinking your leg can go wider and higher, okay, that's great. And if it doesn't go as high, and you're going, wow, Rob, your flexibility is better than mine, then that's brilliant as well. And if you're thinking, wow, my flexibility is way better than Rob's, that's brilliant as well. Okay, everyone is unique. So feet check into position, pelvis drive forward, which I'm going to talk about next. So as we go out into the extension again, we let the foot rotate round, circumflex out to the side of the toe. Now, lift, hips drive forward, extension through the abdominals, pointed away. Do a lot of abdominal training. This is a great exercise to try and get your abs to start to show. We extend the leg forward, point, plan to flex, drive forward, lift up through the torso. Now, the width and the depth of how far you can abduct this leg to the side is determined by your genetics, by your DNA. We are back into position again. Oh, wowzers, and release, shake it out. So the depth of your femur coming in through that, the great extremities comes through into your pelvis. The depth of that socket, if it's short, shallow, or if it's deep, will determine how far you can lift that leg out to the side. That's why I'm saying everyone is unique. Okay, so for now, let's take our feet nice and wide, and we're going to keep our feet nice and parallel. Bring our hands on our hips. Okay, the first movement I'm going to be looking for is that your legs stay straight. Okay, now it's rare that we would say in the industry, lock out your legs. But if you're really tight on your hamstrings, at this point, you're going to be flexing your knee. So I want you to keep your legs straight and drive your pelvis forward. Now allow yourself to just tilt back. Feel what happens in your hip flexors. Now assess for me what happens. As you lean back, what happens? Does it pull in your groin to stabilize, to hold your legs together? Or does it pull in your hip flexors because you're stretching and leaning back? Does it grimace you in your lower back, or does it hit you in your hamstrings? Okay, whichever it is that it's doing, it could be on the lateral side, it could be in your foot, who knows? Whatever it's getting you is unique to you, it's unique to your posture. Come back up into standing, shake it out, walk out of that. So wherever you've got that grimace, that's the area that I want you to work on. Try and get some movement to it. So you're starting to build up a little bit of a list, right hip flexor, left foot, for me there, abdominals. So I'm starting to build up a list of things that I want to start working on. Toes, feet, plank, hands on the hips, lean back again. Now as I'm doing this, I can feel my inner thigh muscles, groin muscles you might know them as, or adductors, they're starting to feel a bit taut as well. So I'm now thinking, right, I'm going to do some lengthening work on those adductors this week in my strength training sessions and also my recovery at night time. Slowly pull back out of this. From here, we're just going to work through a lateral kick. Now to do this one, I'm going to allow you to do two things. One, as we stand, we're going to center our body. And as we take the leg out to the side, we're going to allow that knee flexion to drop us down and push back up. As we're doing it, the knee is going to track the toe and it's going to keep us nice and square. So we drive and back up. Drive and back up. Now, depending on your fitness level, you might do one of these and that's enough. And depending on your fitness and your injuries, etc., you might be able to do 20 of these. I'd highly recommend every day when you wake up, you do at least 4 of these when you get up. You could have a morning routine. Routine is the creates habits, and habits form champions. That's what you've got to start thinking. Feet fist up, punch, change leg. So again, you might need to switch on the brain here a bit like I've got to now. I've got to allow that left knee to flex and lay that leg out to the side. As I'm going, I'm driving the pelvis forward, I'm lifting the chest up. This foot doesn't have the luxury of touching the floor, unless you need to. If you need to step and come back in, then fine for stability, but make sure you're bending your knee and you're sitting down into it, yeah? If you're stepping out and putting pressure on, it's a completely different exercise. You can see the pelvis moves. So step and lift, strength and move, strength and move. Keep it going. Looking good. So also lift, chest lift. Nice. And release. Walk it out. Start assessing again what happens. So for me, getting a little bit of a pinch up here. So this is quadratus laborum area. We know that I need to work on maybe a bit of side flexion to lengthen out these muscle groups, but also lengthening out through the hip flexors anteriorly in my body. Okay, so from there, we're going to come down into a kneeling position. We're just going to finish out by taking this into a nice deep lunge. We're going to allow ourselves to tilt forwards and come back. Now, if you struggle with your knee, your patella, this is a great exercise for you because it's going to lengthen everything out the front of your thigh. However, it's also going to put a lot of pressure in there, and if you've got some bursae that are under a lot of pressure, it's going to aggravate them, maybe result in bursitis or tendinitis or patellotendinitis or runner's knee. So grab yourself a pillow, stick it underneath the knee, and give it that stability. The back foot, the big toe to little toe, needs to be down to the floor. We stride into this, we lift our chest up, and we come back up. I can feel pinches going all over the lateral side of my lower back, over the hip. That's fine. That's an area that I now need to work on. So again, I've now built that list up to 5 or 6 different exercises, which is great. Because instead of it just being going to the gym and just doing something for the sake of it, I'm now actually thinking, okay, how can I build all of those things into different exercises? And that's when you find a quality trainer that will write you programs and work with you to either develop the flexibility of that side and possibly the strength of that side or the opposing side, whichever it is. From here, change leg, work on the stride pattern, work it through. So, think about your big foot. Big toe, little toe, the knuckles must be ground down to the floor. As I do this, I can feel my left foot, and I'm feeling I'm dominating the big toe, pushing that down, and my little toe is up in the air having a holiday. So, I'm now going to correct that. I'm going to drive that little toe down to the ground. I also need to make sure that the gap between my front foot and my back foot is the same as when I was standing, yeah? So this leg isn't behind the other leg, it's still got that gap as we're working. As we drive forward, I've got the extension through that hip flexor. I've got my chest back up nice and high. Again, I'm feeling that big toe, little toe down to the ground. I've got the torso driving forward. I get to a point where I'm not straining the muscle. I'm working through, I'm giving you what would be known as dynamic stretching. I'm getting some extension through the hip flexor. And as I'm pushing back up now, I'm trying to engage the glutes as well. So try working with that. So you're pushing and driving with your glutes to give yourself some quality hip extension. All of this is brilliant work, guys. And if you've got shoulder problems and back problems, for me, like 90% of all those issues are down to pelvis and hip immobility. Now, I've chucked a load of jargon at you in terms of anatomy and physiology today, but it's stuff that if you start working with that terminology and those principles, you can really start understanding how your anatomy moves. And as a result, you'll gain massive improvements in your fitness. Thank you so much for joining me. We're just going to do a couple of stretches. So we can take the feet out wide. We're going to make sure that those feet are nice and parallel to start with as we hinge. And as we do that with our feet nice and parallel, the inner hamstring muscles are going to feel that stretch. From here, as we turn laterally, bring our hands on top of the thighs, we extend the legs again. We feel that stretch. We feel the big toe to the little toe down to the ground. As we turn the feet back in, we come through into standing into extension, drive the arms overhead and reach. We tilt over to the left side, push the arm to extension. We come back up, we take the other hand over, push it out over to extension, and we release. Guys, really, really well trained. Hope you enjoyed that training session. Quite abnormal from lots of swing your leg around to actually doing something really, really functional, thinking about how your anatomy works. Hope you enjoyed that. As always, if I can help, please do get in contact with me. That's what the whole purpose of all of this training is for. Let me know how you got on with it. And as always, pass this on to friends and family that you know would have really benefited from that. Also, other trainers as well. And just thinking about how can we develop what needs to be improved to help our function, posture, and mobility as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Grab your water, hydrate. Ah, that's beautiful. I feel so much taller. It's good. Cheers. Well trained, guys. Really, really good. Well done. There's some lovely mobility. Well done.